is my mission, people always ask, Luca, it seems like you have these two lives. You're like a molecular biologist, but you're still doing this Bitcoin thing. It's like Seyr saying, on how many chairs are you sitting right now, Robin? Do you need 3 chairs or just one? The production of money does not seem to warrant any kind of moral or ethical assessment. It's insane. We're talking about the size of a state to then fulfill or to give the opportunity to people in other countries that don't have easy access to the dollar. Now they have through stablecoins. You should also admit the limitations and the still kind of things that we need to work on, and not just follow one specific narrative, but also be open for criticism. That's the beauty of Bitcoin, basically. A lifelong learning journey.
Who are you? What are you doing? And why are you excited about Bitcoin?
My name is Luca. I grew up in the northern part of Italy called Alto Adige, in a family where we spoke Italian and German. And then I moved to Vienna for my bachelor. So I studied there biomedicine and biotechnology. So I know Vienna, I know how amazing this place is. So I envy you, Robin, a little bit, to be honest. I hope that I can visit you soon or sooner or later. From Vienna, I moved to Switzerland, where I did my master's in molecular health sciences, and I continued with my PhD in the same lab. And actually, 2.5 months ago, I also finished my PhD. And the research area was skin inflammation, so atopic dermatitis. So this is my basically, my interest, right? So I followed this interest as a researcher. I still have this interest. I love doing research. I love molecular biology. And in this journey, I encountered Bitcoin. So now it's a couple of years ago. And I encountered Bitcoin. I think I already told this in the first podcast that we did this together. But I encountered Bitcoin with an initial very simple question that I asked myself, because when you do a PhD, you earn a little bit of money. I wanted to save for my future, for a potential family, and so on and so forth. But I realized that you cannot leave the money just in your bank, so you have to invest. And for me, investing was something completely new, and I had to learn all of it from scratch. And I really mean learning all of it from scratch, because I had no idea what inflation is. And in this diversification, so you learn that you have to diversify in order to minimize your risk when you invest, because you cannot save, or the new saving is investing in a diversified way. And in this diversification journey, let's call it, I encountered Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is extremely fascinating because it forces you to ask very simple questions that are not simple at all. They're very complicated. For example, what is money, and so on. And with this, I had to restudy basically all of it. And yes, this is not so in brief, but this is basically my background story.
I love the biology. I don't even know if I asked the question last time, but if I hadn't asked it, it's really time to ask it. Would you say Bitcoin is an organism? Is this something like almost like a life force?
Yeah. So there are already articles about this topic, right? So I will not be the first one to say yes, but there are some very fascinating parallels in that sense that it's a decentralized organism somehow, right? So you have different actors that play the same game, and they live in a synergy. And when you look out in nature, you have a lot of things that survive through synergies. So they help each other and to keep on moving, right? So I would say there are for sure parallels with when you want to see it as an organism. But we are then in the philosophical sphere, right? To say a software, open source software has something to do with an organism is a kind of stretch, but I can understand the point, yeah.
For me, it's because it's completely decentralized, and like, of course, it's depending on other factors. For example, like the plants needs the sun and water to grow, and the same way Bitcoin needs humans and people to use it to grow, obviously, but it's not destroyable in the same way of like if as long as the sun and water and normal life is possible on planet Earth, there will always be some kind of plants. It's almost impossible to contain plants. So for me, that's the and without having any knowledge about biology or anything like that, like that plants need sun and water. That's how far my knowledge goes on that area. But in that regards, for me, it's like Bitcoin is an own life force only because it's decentralized and there's no one really breeding it, like no one really giving it its life form. Like if we have like, we could also make the argument like Apple is its own life form, but no, like there's a management team that deploys that, so it gets its life form from a central authority that gives it the life form. But Bitcoin has no real guy or girl or management team or anything like that that gives it its life form. It has given its own life form by one origin of Satoshi Nakamoto. Then you can say like, oh, like he gave its life form, but then like every life form has some origin story, but then it grows out of that origin story. I don't know how good or bad this analogy was, but like that's how I see it.
No, I mean, I see also the point of adaptability. So organisms can adapt according to environmental input, right? So this is key for survival, for selection. If you're not able to adapt, you will die. So you will not survive the selection that the environment brings onto you. So I see that point as well, that Bitcoin can be or can adapt, right? For example, you had China ban, the miners had to exit, they had to move to somewhere else. So in that sense, you can see some features that an organism is having, but humans use this tool, right? So we as a collective species, as organism, we are using this layer and this protocol. But yeah, it's a fascinating philosophical journey that you can go on. Completely agree.
The adaptability is really interesting because we have seen so many different shifts in Bitcoin. I just posted, I think today or yesterday, the post of seeing the Bitcoin conferences 12 years ago and now, because it has been around for a long time, the Bitcoin conference. And I was there in Vegas. It was completely crazy. It's a whole different thing when you go to a local meetup versus going to the biggest Bitcoin conference ever with, I think he claimed to have like 35,000 people there, but there was a lot of people there, like 30,000, 35, whatever the number is. And then you see the picture of like 12 years ago with Andreas Antonopoulos standing in front of like 5 people and spreading the gospel of Bitcoin. It's super interesting how it adopts. How do you think Bitcoin will need to adopt to get ready for, because we're still, even though we have grown quite much, but we are still very early and still very small in the bigger regard. How do you think Bitcoin will need to adopt to be ready for like 1 billion users, 2 billion users, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is very crucial, right? So we are talking about scalability, and again, bringing back how organisms develop over time or how they adjust, sometimes also just random by mutation. So you have mutations in the DNA, and this brings a selection advantage or disadvantage. And maybe with Bitcoin, you can claim somehow that some soft forks or some adjustments to the protocol, to the software with a consensus are how we can adjust for the selection pressure of CBDCs or like some other technologies that are coming. I mean, this is again very, very philosophical. So you have also the one camp of people saying, no, we need ossification. we don't want to adjust this software, this protocol anymore. It's good enough as it is. And you have another camp that is basically saying that, yeah, okay, we have the Lightning Network to scale. We have the main layer for really final settlements, but in the future, most likely this will not be possible for everyone. So we need to have some scalability, and the question is how, right? So how will we scale to let more people join in, and do we scale in a way that is decentralized or less decentralized? I think future will tell. Let's hope that it's in a decentralized fashion, so that Bitcoin can stay decentralized and secure.
Have you followed the op return limit discussion?
Just very briefly. So I'm currently on a social media detox tour. And if you do that, it's fascinating how you feel better, but in some sense you lose also information. So I know it's there, but I don't know every nuance and every single detail. But maybe you can give me a short update.
Yeah, I'm always hesitating to do that because I'm not technically involved too deep, but it's basically it's not a similar debate than the block size. Like the block size is way more fundamental, obviously, but it's about like what do we put on Bitcoin and how can we limit that? And if we erase the limit of op return, is that then putting more spam and more things on top of Bitcoin? Or maybe on the other side, a hard-coded limit. I always, when coming from software development, I actually come from software development. Hard-coded limits are not always the best way to do things, and hard code into a software can sometimes lead to problems and bugs down the line. My short stance is on that. We need a really good reason to change Bitcoin's code. If the reason is not strong enough, we shouldn't do it. So we should protect the current state, and the current state should only be changed if a reason comes on ground that is so strong that we have to change it. So if we are in doubt, we should not change it. if we have a clear of like, we really have to go there, then it does not make sense. But the good thing is it's democracy, like it's like people can, if there's something implemented, people can vote with their own node. They can choose which thing they are supporting. And if you're coming back to the organism, maybe there's something growing out of Bitcoin that will die. Maybe something grows out of Bitcoin that then this is the new thing. So the same thing happened with I think Bitcoin Cash and the block size war was way bigger than that. Like this is a very small thing compared to that, but block size war showed like the original thing survived, and the offspring, the mutation of it turns out to be dead. I mean, it's not dead, but it's like 99% of value lost. So you could argue that it's dead. And so yeah, that's super interesting to see those discussions. But I think probably it's fine to make some social media detox. I think you don't have to, but the whole thing about Bitcoin is you don't have to follow the news. Like that's why we have Bitcoin. Maybe because we are early, you should follow it a little bit, which you definitely are. But like even if you are like outside of Bitcoin and you're just looking in like once a year, once every half year, and just checking in how it's going, I think that's enough with Bitcoin, because you don't have to keep up with daily news. That's why I also don't do news, because I think it's not as important with Bitcoin, and it doesn't make me happy at all reporting news.
Yeah, but sometimes, you have this feeling that you're missing out. And that's why you go there, you're constantly scrolling and then seeing what news are there and so on. But most of it is noise. That's the issue. And it's time consuming. And yeah, I can recommend to everyone, try it out and see if it works for you. For me, it's working currently very well. And back to the original question, so the up return. Now, thank you for the update. I think for Bitcoin in general, moving slow and not breaking things is good. So we should maintain this, and that's also the difference between all other projects that claim to be faster, claim to be whatever, and they move fast, and sometimes they break things. This is it, basically.
Absolutely. You said also one thing with diversification. I don't know if you're still diversifying. I personally went completely bonkers on Bitcoin and went all in with my money and with my time. But it's fun that you came with diversification to Bitcoin, and a lot of people always like. How do you see diversification now as you are now a Bitcoiner, or like you understand Bitcoin deeply? Because before I also thought diversification is important, and now I'm kind of on the opposite of like, if you really want to achieve something, diversification is kind of like, yeah, if you have a plan B, you don't really have a plan A in that kind of a sense.
It's like Seyr saying, on how many chairs are you sitting right now, Robin? Do you need 3 chairs or just one? No, so for me, I came into all of this just because I wanted to save money, right? So that was the very beginning driver, or let's say this thing that induced my journey into finance and everything else, because I did not understand why I am kind of forced to invest to maintain my purchasing power over time. So this was my initial point. But I still, so if people, for example, think that company XYZ is very interesting and they really like the vision or the idea, and they want to invest in that, go for it, do it. You should support visions, and you should support companies or ideas that you like. Now, if you just want to save, Bitcoin is now there as a saving technology. So, of course, it's volatile, measured in US dollar, right? It's very volatile, measured in different currencies. But the question is, what do you use as your measuring stick? That was also very fascinating in my journey, when I understood that Bitcoin is there now, and you can use all different currencies to see the price of Bitcoin. And when you look at the chart of Bitcoin in US dollar, in euro, in Turkish lira, in different currencies, there is a very interesting finding that you can make, is that, okay, but what glasses am I putting on to see the price of Bitcoin, right? Or just because I'm living now in Switzerland, my perception is Swiss franc. But for other people living in other countries, their perception, they see prices, they see these signals in their local currency. And depending on how good or bad your local currency is, the Bitcoin chart looks very different. That's also a very interesting observation, that a lot of people, maybe, they don't look at it because they are trapped in their local currency monopoly and they are not aware of other currencies. But yeah, this you should be aware of that. And as I said, for someone that is privileged and that can also withstand 70 to 80% drawdowns in the long run, Bitcoin until now was quite a very good saving technology, if you want to frame it that way.
Yeah, there's those two components of like, it's a savings technology, but it's also getting adopted as a savings technology. So it has this investing kind of behavior till it's actually savings technology. So you get the savings technology maybe in 40 years, 50 years, whatever the time frame is.
Yeah.
Up until then, you get a really good performing investment technology. But at its core, when you just look at the fundamentals, it's a savings technology. And this is really hard to explain to people outside of Bitcoin. Like you get it, like maybe most of the audience gets it, but like it's really hard to explain it.
Maybe let me rephrase what I said. So Bitcoin brings all the properties to the table that make it a very good saving technology. That is maybe better, right? That also explains the volatility, and that also explains this current phase that we are in, right? This potential phase of seeing a monetary tool or like a new type of money being monetized over time, right? Imagine if we would speed run the development of gold last 3,000 years. So maybe we are in that kind of phase where we are going in that direction. Yeah.
So we are speed running the development of gold now with Bitcoin is already getting adopted way quicker than gold was. I think gold needed a long more time from the first discovery till like it was a substantial store of value, which is interesting. Maybe also the medium of exchange and unit of account side of things for Bitcoin comes way faster because of that.
That's like knowing that would be amazing, right? But I think we live now in a time where information can run at the speed of light, right? So we never had that. Previously, information was going at the speed of horses, or that's it. And living now in a time where information can travel at the speed of light, and also now value can travel at the speed of light, makes things very different, and maybe also faster, but maybe also more volatile, right? We don't know. But buckle up, it will be a very interesting journey.
One thing that I'm always curious with guests that are returning, what kind of have you learned on Bitcoin, around Bitcoin, about Bitcoin, whatever, in the last year? I think it's been even over a year since you have last been on.
Yeah, what have I learned? I have learned that this topic brings me back all the time. So it's so fascinating, and there are so many new ideas that pop up after multiple years. And also just the idea of the ethics of money production. In Bitcoin you have miners that find new blocks, they have to spend energy, but thinking of like money production as ethical problems of production have been assessed throughout the years in a very great number of industries, right? So ranging from, I don't know, agriculture or to textile manufacturing in especially developing countries, and also pharmaceuticals. But today, or I think also in the past, only a very few industries escape this scrutiny, right? So of how things are produced in a kind of ethical way. And I think one of the most important industries, if you want to call it, is the production of money, right? So money is kind of omnipresent in our modern life, yet the production of money does not seem to warrant any kind of moral or ethical assessment. And also these kind of thoughts, they came up very late in my journey. So you can see that it never ends. It's a learning journey that you start, and it never ends. And as a researcher, this is very fascinating, because I would characterize myself as a specialist. And you can see how many views Bitcoin can be viewed on. you can view it on this, okay, monetary perspective, but then you can also look at it at the mining, right? The energy perspective. You can look at it in the human rights perspective, global adoption, also strategy and policy, like game theory, the technological aspects. If you want, there is so much to learn about this topic that it will be a lifelong journey. That's that's the beauty of Bitcoin, basically. A lifelong learning journey.
I hope to be on that. It's interesting, the ethics of fear, that you bring that up, because if you imagine two aliens talking to each other and they're discussing how monetary policy works on Earth, and they're having the discussion of like, what is the more ethical money that you could use? Is it fiat money? Is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? And what are the pros and cons? It really zooms out of like, what are the fundamentals? What's the first principles? And if you zoom out and from first principles and not from this like small zoomed in view of a human being, you really see that Bitcoin is the only thing that is globally available, has the perfect properties, and is ethical, because it does not exclude anyone. If you have an internet connection and a smartphone, which more people than bank accounts there are there, you can use Bitcoin. And bank accounts are extreme, and fiat money is extremely excluding. I talked with Seyr, an African woman, and she talked about the problem that when she and her friends have to go and spend something in the fiat currency, they have to ask the husbands, because only the husbands have access to the bank account. And it was such an emotional story for me to hear that, and how she has gone through that, and how Bitcoin kind of saved her from that man, and also from kind of the force behind that, not having access to money. That it completely blew me away of like, the problems of fiat is not just that the government steals from you. The problem of fiat is way deeper. It's an ethical problem that we have in our society. It's almost a human rights problem that we have with money, and human rights, like always, like, oh, like clean water and political topics, and all those things usually come up. But money is usually not discussed. I mean, the Human Rights Foundation with Alex Gladstein, of course, they are discussing it. But like outside of them, like the ethical case for Bitcoin, there should be a book like that. Like that, there should be like, we have the conservative case, we have the progressive case for Bitcoin, we have so many different cases for Bitcoin. Like, well, I think the ethical case of Bitcoin, it would be one hell of a book, because it really shines a light on how bad fiat is inherently. Sorry for my small rant, but this is a really important topic.
I completely agree in that sense, that also where you're born, of course, the economic realities are one thing, but also the monetary realities make a lot of the economic realities and the social realities. And when you think, I think we have approximately 160 to 180 global like fiat currencies, and out of those, not a lot are very good or stable to store your value or to store your labor in, right? And it really is crucial for your future. And also, if you think how many people would like to have access to the dollar, you see it now popping up with stablecoins that give access to the dollar, and you can see the demand and how much now, for example, Tether is buying US treasuries. It's insane. We're talking about the size of a state to then fulfill or to give the opportunity to people in other countries that don't have easy access to the dollar. Now they have through stablecoins. And you can argue that our monetary system in some respects is also kind of, it's neocolonialism. You have a global monetary system where wealthy industrialized nations stand at the center, and they control these monetary levers to their own advantage, and they're optimizing also their own economic wealth and also their economic power. So if you think that the United States, right, they are the issuer of the world reserve currency, but to my knowledge, none of the Federal Reserve's mandates extend beyond domestic interests, right? And also, when you look at institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, his history shows that they did not hesitate to collaborate with unelected autocrats and also some dictators, and they enforced structural adjustments without a popular mandate from the citizens living in those countries. And ultimately the loans also become debt traps. So over time, of course, the borrower has to repay far more than their original sum. This is the idea of a loan, and with interest payments, they are then also exceeding the initial amount. And I think Alex Gladstein, you mentioned him, he's doing an amazing work to showcase this, and he also wrote a book. I think it's called How the IMF and the World Bank. And this, I can highly recommend this book. It's amazing. And in his book, I think he's citing that in between the 60s and 2017, approximately 62 or 60 trillion has been extracted from the developing world. And this is equivalent to around 620 or something like this Marshall Plans in today's dollar, right? It's insane if you think of it. Yeah.
I just want to bring that up for people. It's called, let me quickly show it to you. That's an interesting, I wasn't even aware of that book, actually. I have to see it. How the IMF and the World Bank sell exploitation as development, from Alex Gladstein. It's an interesting title right there. Hidden Repression. Love it.
I can highly recommend this book because it's really based on historical facts, and the sources that he gives are openly available. And have a read. You really feel the privilege when you live in countries that have access to the US dollar or the euro or the Swiss francs. The Swiss franc, yeah.
Then stablecoins inherently evil because they widen the reach of exactly that system.
Yeah, I would not say inherently. Like, stablecoins fulfill a purpose for people that would like to have access to dollar, and they see the dollar as a very reliable and stable store of value, right? So inherently evil is a very loaded word, but I see where you're coming. It's basically giving the US another way to have this privilege, this extraordinary privilege that they had after the gold standard, where they basically coupled the dollar to oil, right? The petrodollar system, where other countries needed the US dollar to get energy. Now other countries, or other individuals, if they want dollars, they can access it through stablecoins, and this gives the US another buyer of their debt. So it's kind of evil, but it fulfills also a kind of reason. There is a reason why people would like to have the US dollar, right?
Yeah, in countries where you have inflation rates of, 50%, 100%, 200%, exactly. Turkey, Venezuela, Argentina, I mean, Argentina is now, I think, a little bit better, but like in general, like those countries, if you have such a high inflation rate and all of a sudden you get access to the US dollar, like from the Turkish lira, the dollar is almost as good as from the dollar Bitcoin. Not with the sovereignty rights, not with the freedom rights, not with all those. Just from a store of value perspective, it's way better. And I think from there, it's something good, but it's still the same failed system. They're just trying to like if you're allergic to apples, they just give you a better apple and just not like you should that's a weird comparison, but it's like you should start eating bananas instead when you're allergic to apples. So it's like when you have such a bad system, but your frame of reference is this is the only system there is, you're taking the better flawed system instead of a not flawed system. And I'm really interested in stablecoins. Was too big of a topic, in my opinion, at the Bitcoin conference. If you make a social media detox, you might have not seen this video. There's I think a 2-minute video.
I saw that one. That one I saw.
The important news come to you. Very nice. It's like a 2-minute video where a stablecoin, the word is like smashed together, and it came a lot stablecoin as a topic. I think the only thing, and I'm curious what you think about that. The only thing stablecoins really do long term. I mean, short term they will do actually good things and bad things, but long term it will probably extend the life of the US dollar, maybe the euro, maybe some like it will extend the life of the 2, 3, 4 biggest currencies, will demolish the value of the other currencies even faster. Because if you're in Turkey and you have the you can choose freely between the US dollar, the Turkey, and Bitcoin. And maybe Bitcoin needs a lot more education to do, so maybe the jump is higher. But from one government currency to another government currency, it's maybe an easier sell. So people will say like, oh, I'll take this token because obviously it's doing better. And this will then even faster demolish the value and the trust of the Turkish lira and all the other currencies that are flawed. And I don't know, like there are hundreds of currencies out there. So it might lead us to a world where there's 3 currencies out there and Bitcoin.
I mean, this is so interesting, so crucial, because stablecoins really also are kind of a threat to other sovereign currency monopolies, right? So if you look, for example, at Tether, I think in 2024 they were the 7th largest buyer of US Treasury bonds. This is insane, you know. So how quick and how large they're getting. And also the ECB are already talking about, okay, these stable coins are kind of a threat. And it's, you know, if you would open up all the borders now in that sense that you would allow your citizens to pay taxes in whatever currency they would like to choose, right? What do you think will happen? So it would be a very interesting experiment in allowing people to decide on their own which currency they would like to own, because then they need it, right, to groceries or whatever. And maybe they also accept it if we open up this thought experiment now. Most likely people would move to a currency, or in now we're talking about fiat currencies, to a currencies that is more stable, right? It's more reliable and has the best rule of law system. If we talk about fiat, trust is also very important. And if you have kind of a legal framework where capital markets are open, where you have rule of law, these monetary networks build up more trust than if you have sovereign state and central, or like politicians and central bankers like being, I got you, no worries. Those currency monopolies will collapse sooner. But now, as you said, you have something that is very geopolitically super interesting, something that is decentralized and cannot be controlled by no one, right? So this is just there, and every 10 minutes there is another block. And this for sure will not be ignored, because strategically it's also very interesting to have something of some units of something that is not controlled by any sovereign state and transact value in something like this. It opens up like all the BRICS discussion and what is China and Russia doing, without all, Bitcoin is there for anyone. You can use it. It's difficult to prevent people from using it. It's censorship resistant. We have to live with that.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from Coin Vigilant represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. You nicely understated the fear and trust part. Like, if trust is important, I think it's all about trust. But and this is a crucial point, which I learned from all the people that told me about the history of Argentina and about the history of inflation in general. But Argentina was very nicely covered on this podcast already with multiple guests that have gone through the history and also lived through the history there. What I've learned from that is, like, once trust is gone, it's gone. Like, it's a switch that you put on, and all of a sudden, like, everyone is flocking out, and it's a matter of weeks, days, sometimes even hours for millions and billions to disappear in the monetary system. And we have so many examples of that. I mean, if you just study the history of Argentina and the monetary system over the last 50 years. You've seen how many currencies they have gone through, how often they have to reinvent themselves in the currency to regain trust. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating for me, first of all, that the trust is going so quickly, but then the people trust this new thing that's not different at all. They always promise that it's different, but it's never different. I don't know. When I look at all those things going on, I'm like, eventually everything will lead to Bitcoin. All those things lead to Bitcoin. But then I also see how people just trust the next fiat currencies that they put a new name on there. And I'm like, how did they brainwash people to just like trust this new thing, even though the old thing just crashed? If I buy a car from a manufacturer and it just explodes in the middle of the road and I somehow survive it, I will not go ahead and buy from the same manufacturer again. Like that seems ridiculous.
I agree. Trust is crucial, especially when we are talking about money, right? Trust is completely central. And also when we talk about Bitcoin, trust is super essential. Also, when we talk about gold, trust is super essential. But in what are we trusting, right? So we are trusting in specific properties that make this tool, this type of money desirable for other people to engage in trade. Fiat currencies, of course, are also based on trust, but they are also enforced by your sovereign state. So in some scenarios, you are forced to go again to the same like car dealership and drive down the road and the car explodes again, because you have to use this currency to pay taxes and to live in that local monopoly. This is why I think now we are living in a very interesting new scenario where it's very difficult for sovereign states to also control all the, capital controls are crucial when your state is going through some issue. Then you're getting in with capital controls. You're restricting also the amount of dollars and foreign currencies people can hold, assets people can hold, and so on. Now Bitcoin comes in as this new tool that is not impossible. Let's say it's extremely difficult to control, but you still can build a lot of hurdles around it to make it much more difficult. But there are ways, you just need 12 to 24 words and you can cross a border and you're gone. And this automatically also gives more responsibility to the individuals that are responsible for the stability of the currency, stability of politics, of the whole society. So just the existence of Bitcoin is kind of a fitness program, if you want to call it like this, or for the people in charge to do a good job. Because if they don't do a good job, if people are aware of this new technology, there is now a kind of escape. And which is very interesting, So it kind of also helps our current monetary system by existing. If you think like this,
it's super interesting. It's also the implications of having Bitcoin coexisting. Probably now for now already for 16 years, but probably now for a few more years, maybe a few more decades to come, with that fiat system, and having that parallel comparison, and having people like you and me and many others that already see and already live partially or almost fully in Bitcoin, and then also seeing how people mostly or solely live in the fiat system and how they develop. It's just such an interesting time to be alive and see the developments.
But that's also why, in my opinion, education is key. Education is still the biggest need, in my opinion, and this is why I'm still here trying to contribute and doing my part, because people spend, let's say, 40 years earning money, but they do not spend maybe one single hour in trying to learn about money. And if they would do this, they would learn a lot. I don't know if they would then also see Bitcoin as a potential solution. It's up to them. But they just learning about money is so crucial, and this is why this is my mission. People always ask, Luca, it seems like you have these two lives. You are like a molecular biologist, but you're still doing this Bitcoin thing. I mean, why are you doing this? And I think it's so important to educate people about the importance of this tool of money, because we need it, and because it's really, really important.
I love this quote from Seyr. I just looked it up. You will spend 40,000 hours of your life trying to make money. It's worthwhile to spend 100 hours figuring out how to keep it.
Exactly. How to keep it, why you even need to invest it. Those are the very simple questions that not a lot of people ask, but also because they don't have any mental space, right? You come home after work, you're tired, you just turn on the TV, that's it. But podcasts like yours and others are so important exactly for this purpose. If someone is listening now for the first time and they're like, okay, cool, I'm learning about money. Yes, continue, and whatever you think about Bitcoin at the moment, that's fine. Just study this topic and then come to your own conclusions. That's the key. And be skeptic. Like, the more skeptic you are, the better.
And I'm over halfway through my contribution to contribute over 100 hours of Bitcoin podcasts to the community. I think I have like now 15 or 514 episodes with yours. Each is like, I don't know, 1 hour, 1.5 hours long. So I'm soon in like 1-2 years coming to this 1,000 hours of Bitcoin hours contributed to the community. I'm looking forward to that. I'm probably like make a small party.
That's crazy. But very good. I mean, I'm, seeing your journey, Robin, also was super cool. Seeing you emerge as a new podcaster and doing this. You know what? You guys are doing it weekly. No. I'm doing it daily. Boom. I was like, let's go. I love it.
Someone else will come and do it like hourly. He came, saw, and did it daily. Awesome. Maybe a good point to ask you, because you're doing a lot of things also in Bitcoin with Bitcoin Talents, with Bitcoin Institution. Maybe you can give us some overview of what you're doing actually in Bitcoin and how you contribute there.
Yeah, so as I said, right, education, in my opinion, is still the biggest need, for sure. And throughout my journey, I wanted to contribute. So what I did in the last 3 years, I was first part of the Bitcoin Talents program, which is an 18-week Bitcoin mentoring program organized by the Frankfurt School of Finance. So I did the first cohort, and since then I was a mentor. And the topics covered there are Bitcoin only, and you go through everything. You go through the technology, you make your first transaction, also on the Lightning Network, you set up a wallet, you understand the cryptography behind it. You also study the very important topic of money. You look at our current system, how money is created. You look also throughout history, what types of money people used. You also go through all the several use cases of Bitcoin, also the regulatory landscape, etc., etc. But the most fascinating thing, why I did it the whole time, because I did not get any money for mentoring. I did this on my free time, is the people around the world. So this was something that was you did not have to pay anything, and it was on Zoom. So the network that I built, and also all the interesting people that talked about their own experience, this was very, very valuable. But it is now sadly discontinued. But there are also already talks that other organizations will continue with it. But the Frankfurt School of Finance, the Blockchain Center, had a change in the leading teams, or in the C-level position, basically. And the new director has another vision. He's also a little bit controversial in the the German-speaking Bitcoin community. So his name is Kopier Georg. So you can look him up, and also look up his podcast interviews. So his stance towards Bitcoin is, rather, let's say, negative. And this is why also people saw this coming. But I would say overall it's a complete success story, because more than 600 people, more or less, around the whole world were able to get this education, and they are out there and maybe educating other people, right? And since then, I also did some personal seminars and talks. I was invited also at universities where I talked about the topic of money. And currently, what I'm also where I'm also involved is in the build-up of the Swiss Bitcoin Institute, which is an initiative that was started by Markus Dapp, a Bitcoiner here in Switzerland. And the main goal is to basically become a independent go-to place for people in government, in corporate, or also in the non-profit sector, who take a strategic decision on behalf of their organization, and they would like to. And Bitcoin keeps popping up, right? So Bitcoin keeps popping up, Bitcoin keeps popping up, and maybe they would like to know more, or they are wondering, okay, is it important for us or not, and why? And is exactly in such situations, people still do not have many places to go to. And they also do not listen to Bitcoin podcasts as yours. I'm sorry, Robin. I hope that they do, but they also don't go to meetups to learn, or they also don't have time to read a book. And in those specific occasions, those people are usually used to look around for kind of professional analysis and, reports and like expert opinions that can help them to basically do their job. And this is the focus of the Swiss Bitcoin Institute. And we will most likely cover a broad range of Bitcoin topics, with also a regular research offering, as well as the different educational formats suitable for these decision makers. And I think it would be very interesting to maybe also have an interview with Markus, that he for sure can talk much more about the Swiss Bitcoin Institute. I'm there to help. I'm there to support him, also with no monetary interest. But as I said, education is still key, and this Swiss Bitcoin Institute literally fills in this perfect spot. Yeah.
I always say that if you are in, like, we all have different talents, we all have different things we can do, but if you want to help Bitcoin, the most important thing is education in the next 5 to 10 years. Yes, we also need engineers to build out infrastructure, to build out second layers, third layers, the ecosystem, apps, interfaces, all those things. We need salespeople, we need support people, we need all different range of careers in Bitcoin. But the most important one is education, because this is what brings people in. This is what keeps people in. This is what actually educates people why Bitcoin. And this is the most important thing that we need for Bitcoin in the next 5 to 10 years. Everything else is downstream of that. So like, if we are educating the world the best way possible on Bitcoin, the engineers will come and build things. The salespeople will come and sell things. The service providers will come. The support people will come. All those things will come downstream of that. So I always love every single educational channel, platform, event, institute, whatever you have, because this is the most important thing you can possibly do for Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, amen. I completely agree. And also, what is crucial, in my opinion, coming also from a scientific background, is the way you educate. So the way you educate, and also should, in my opinion, be kind of objective. You should also admit the limitations and the still kind of things that we need to work on, and not just follow one specific narrative, but also be open for criticism and be open for other opinions. So, for example, as I mentioned, this Kopiel Georg, he brings in other opinions and other viewpoints, which are very crucial, which need to be settled in kind of debates. And the person or the group that brings the best facts to the table or the best evidence to the table, this is how we progress. I mean, this is also how science progresses, right? So we never have the truth. We are in search of the truth by falsifying what we know at this moment. And I would like to bring also this way of doing research more into the Bitcoin ecosystem. Be objective, as much independent as you can. Of course, once you are in Bitcoin, also invested, you have a bias, 100%. But be aware of this, right? Be aware of this and admit it, and see what the other position brings to the table, and you can then argue in a friendly and polite way.
That's a good thing about Bitcoin. There's so many different voices in there. Of course, you can listen to one voice, but like there's the fact that there's so much fighting going on inside of Bitcoin is for me a very healthy sign of many different opinions in there. I mean, my favorite example, and maybe people are tired of me bringing it up, but the diet thing with like, we have carnivore and plant-based. We have so many different, we are talking about if we should use sunscreen or not.
Exactly.
It goes to so many different layers that it's really interesting because we have so many different perspectives in Bitcoin. So I don't worry too much that we don't have enough different opinions in Bitcoin, but we have to make them louder. We have to amplify all those different voices and different opinions inside of Bitcoin. So yeah, education is a huge responsibility of each and every one of us Bitcoiners. I feel like
I can sign it, and I'm on team put on sunscreen.
I also put on sunscreen just because my skin really does not like sun. Apparently, I get red massively, and sometimes I just want to go into the sun and don't want to burn. Maybe I have to. There are the people that are like, oh, like you have to slowly get there. I'm like, I don't know. Wearing a cap maybe all the time, and there's different solutions. Other topic: are you team carnivore or plant-based or something in between?
I'm team do whatever you want and just don't bother me. That's the most important team I'm in. I can completely understand where vegetarian people come from or vegan people come from. Yeah.
Sounds like you're omnivore. Really cool. Then one more thing I want to get to before we end, even though we are already over 1 hour. But how do you look at all those institutional adoption of Bitcoin? How do you see this progression of like we have more and more institutional money, we have more and more companies in there, and it's kind of the individual is getting out of the focus a little bit.
Yeah. So I think if you have an asset that is potentially becoming a new type of money or a new type of medium of exchange, this is something that you would kind of expect. It would be very weird if institutions, governments, Wall Street, whoever would not jump on this train. For me, I see this, I observe this. To be honest, my opinion is, let's have a look. Of course, it's kind of crazy to see how much is being accumulated by single entities. It's also kind of scary and crazy to see how much single entities store, like also for other people, right? For ETFs, I think Coinbase stores the Bitcoin somewhere, if I'm still up to date. So there are very big and large honeypots that no one knows, right? Could be kind of attacked. There is a very big financial incentive now to do that. They for sure will have their security and their precaution there. But if something happens and those honeypots or those honeypots where a lot of Bitcoin are stored will be attacked, this will do a lot to the fiat price in Bitcoin. So we will have a large drawdown. But if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, and especially if you have the ability to self-custody as a single individual, and this property is still there, then I don't see any issue in the long run. That's my take. So self-custody and the possibility to hold your own keys is one of the most important properties that Bitcoin brings to the table, in my opinion, combined with, of course, digital scarcity, right? Bitcoin was the first time we were able to have scarcity in the digital realm. An email, I sent you an email, you have the information, I have the information. Bitcoin, I sent you Bitcoin, I don't have it anymore. So this is my take on that. Would you agree?
100% with, especially for me, always important is, so the only concern I really have with this institutional thing is where we build also out consumer goods. Like I think borrowing against the Bitcoin can be a very good idea. But at the same time, if we all borrow our stack out and give it to institutions and get fiat in return, we don't have the Bitcoin anymore. If we all put Bitcoin in ETFs, we don't have the Bitcoin anymore. If we all have Bitcoin on exchanges and use it for financial products, we don't have the Bitcoin anymore. So I just want to always make sure we are increasing the number of Bitcoin held by institutions, by individuals, and decrease the amount of Bitcoin held by institutions. And this is very crucial, in my opinion, for Bitcoin long term, even though I don't see any, 70% or so of all Bitcoin are held by individuals. So most of the Bitcoin are actually held by individuals, and only the minority of the Bitcoin are held by institutions. If that flips completely on its head, which it could, this would be a sign for me of okay, maybe we have to really push harder for individuals holding their own keys. But I think it will never be a risk for Bitcoin. It's just something I just really want to push people that they have their own keys and they have the sovereignty rights, and that the core ethos of Bitcoin is not getting lost. Even if it gets lost, I don't think it's a danger for Bitcoin. And I don't think it's a danger if you hold your own keys. I think that will always be possible, and is always something there. I love the email example also, what you gave.
I would also add one thing, because holding your own keys comes with a risk, and comes also with kind of, you need to really be aware and be very responsible, right? And we live in a world where comfort and giving away responsibility is kind of promoted, or is seen as not a big issue. So if we would move in a direction where more institutions would custody Bitcoin for you, one solution that I would see is still a proof of reserve. But proof of reserve that you could verify 100% in your sovereign way that this institution where you are willing and you're giving away the responsibility is actually holding the key or basically the access to the Bitcoin for you. I see that also as a very important feature that Bitcoin brings that gold did not have, right? So gold, the ability to have proof of reserve for gold is like physically going there, counting the bars and hoping that those bars are actual gold and are not kind of modified.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's a how should I say it? I think we can let it stand like that.
Let's see what the comments will say if we actually can't let it stand like this. But I'm very happy to hear other opinions. But I would say having the ability to do proof of reserve in this digital way, of course you have to trust what you see on your screen, but if you can do it on your own with your own node and stuff, might help. But hold your own keys. I also am a fan of that.
And there are many different middlewares of that. There's like this full on, you keep it at exchange. Then there is like exchanges, but with proof of reserves. Then is like collaborative multi-signature, multi-sig setups where maybe they hold some key and you hold some keys. There's multi-signatures. I don't recommend them, but there's multi-signatures where the other institutions hold more keys than you hold. So you cannot make any mistakes basically, and you still have a key, which I don't know. You can also have it on exchange, but it's better than having it on exchange. It's better also to just proof of reserve because you actually have a key. And then there's the multi-signature setup where you give one key, maybe of 5 or maybe of 3 keys away, and you have the other ones. And then there's, of course, the multi-signature or single signature where you have all the keys or the one key that signs it up. And also in that situation, there's also many different variants of how you do it. Do you give like a key to like your dad? Do you give a key to the bank deposit box? Do you give a key to some friend? Do you give someone a key that don't even like they don't even realize that they have a key? So like sneaky, like there are many different, I heard so many crazy stories of multi-signature. I could make a whole episode around that. So there are different variations of sovereignty. And I just want to push people as far as possible to that sovereignty side. That's just me. But for example, like if I talked with my grandma doesn't have Bitcoin, but if she's like, oh, like Robin, how should I hold Bitcoin? I will not tell her about 5 key multi-signature. I don't know, like maybe I get her a bit key. Maybe I hold it for her. Maybe we have a multi-signature setup with collaborative, like Unchained or Casa or something like that. Maybe I send her to the Bitcoin way. It's like there are many different avenues. And that's a good thing that we have many different options in here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And also just, the possibility to then really be completely sovereign over time might make more or less sense depending on political circumstances, depending on like social circumstances and so on. So just the possibility to be 100% sovereign is so important and so crucial. That's also why I understand you pushing to the most self-sovereign way as possible. But people could argue, look, I live in Switzerland. Switzerland is at the moment politically, socially, economically put in an extremely or a super nice condition. So I trust this framework. And I also am completely fine by giving away my sovereignty and holding it through whatever custody model, and which is based in Switzerland, for example. But suddenly, maybe after 50 years, political movements change, social issues arise, and then you're like, okay, I don't like this very much. Have I still the possibility, or is my setup set up in such a way that I can again access my wealth, right, in a fast and easy way in case of danger and so on. So we come back again about also being this flexibility to now just have those 12, 24 words in your mind and go away in a worst case scenario. Of course, let's hope that this will not happen. And I'm a fan of trying to avoid this as much as possible. But the possibility is here.
Then also comes the reality of even though Bitcoiners don't like politics as much, we actually have to see politics and see what are we doing. Like, what is politics doing to me? What is politics doing to my Bitcoin? And are we headed for war? Are we headed for something else? Because these are all important questions. And if you're not aware of what is currently going on in the world in politics, and you just say like, oh, I have Bitcoin, I don't care, you're a little bit naive, because those politicians have the power of sending you to prison. They have the power to get you to engage in a war, even though if you don't like it. And so I think the it's completely different. It's completely derailed from my original thing. But I think having an eye, being an observer, what's going on political level, and seeing how safe and stable my own country is and what threats are there in my own country. And Switzerland is I think like a very good country in that regard, or stable and politically, is very important. I mean, we have Ukraine, we have so many different examples of that.
Yeah, and I would just argue against this point that, or not against, but I want to say that, politicians should represent you. This is kind of very this ideal saying, but it should be like this. So they should represent your interest and should follow the vote or the mandate. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm originally from Italy, so I'm saying this and smiling at the same time, because I also know how reality is playing out in front of our eyes. But we should be aware of this and also educate about this topic. But this brings us to a whole new tangent.
We already have topics for the third podcast, I guess. I asked each and every one of my returning guests, what have you learned since you've last been on the podcast outside of Bitcoin?
Yes. So I finished my PhD, right? So it would be kind of weird as a researcher if you would not have something to tell. And what we learned is very interesting in that sense that we now have a new pathway that now it's getting molecular, like it's getting deep in the molecular biology topics, but I will be brief. So we discovered a new interesting molecular pathway in atopic dermatitis that might be interesting to target in the future with a new drug, because we saw that we have a downregulation of receptors that are crucial for the signaling, and this signaling is crucial for regeneration of the epidermis, which is the outermost layer of the skin. I will keep it in this box, but of course, doing a PhD in molecular biology or in general, you learn a lot, and this is the research aspect. Besides all the soft skills that you also learn how to move in academia and so on.
It's something where I'm like, what are those words?
This was the same reaction with a lot of friends that I invited for my defense. So usually you have the first slide that is a very brief introductory, about the skin, how the skin is built. It's the largest organ of the human body, and so on. And from slide 2 onwards, they said, "Okay, I know that you're talking English, but I didn't understand one single word."
It's English, but I don't understand this English.
Technical terms, just technical terms. But to the fellow biologists and researcher out there, I got you.
I love that. Really cool. We have an end routine, as you know, from in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asks you the question, what do you love more than Bitcoin?
I mean, this is very easy. Family, friends, my girlfriend, people. Your time is scarcer, more precious than Bitcoin. Value it, learn that you should value it, and this is the most important thing, I think.
I 100% agree with that, and really beautiful. I think the perfect way to end this amazing conversation, this amazing podcast. Thank you so much, Luca. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Yeah, thank you, Robin, for having me again. And now we can see if people agree with the high expectation that we set at the very beginning. Yeah. People can find me, I think on LinkedIn is the easiest way. So I said I am doing a social media detox, but you can still find me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out there. I also linked to a Medium article that I wrote, which is a very nice 20 minutes read also for people that are early beginners. You can find that one also on LinkedIn. And yeah, in general, if there are people in Switzerland that are also in the pharmaceutical scene or in industry, reach out. Let's grab a coffee and talk about Bitcoin and science. Thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you so much, Luca. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.